The pressure is on after the previous presentation. That was super good. Very intrigued by a lot of the stuff we went through. But I'm super happy to be here today with you guys. And we're going to talk about research we did about a year ago, where we looked at a new fridge design and how to make it as best it can be. And not to worry, we're not going to talk about fridges. I'm not going to go into details because you probably don't care. We're more going to go into the why, the what, and the how. So I'm going to start by talking about the why, like why we actually decided to go with this methodology, and then Katrin is going to continue with what we actually then went ahead and did and how we did it, and learnings from using VR in this type of environment. So kicking off, Electrolux is one of the biggest appliance manufacturers in the world, headquartered in Stockholm. And we supply millions and millions of households with everyday appliances that shape living for the better, because they truly do. We have washing machines, we have fridges, we have ovens, we have cookers, we have loads and loads and loads of products in our portfolio, most of which people don't really think about. I mean, I guess most of you would have gone to your fridge this morning if you are not staying in the hotel and picked up a juice or milk for your coffee or whatever. And then you went ahead and potentially put your dishes in the dishwasher if you're a tidy person. And heading back here, and if I ask you, did you actually do that and how did that work out? You couldn't tell me because you were on autopilot and you don't think about it because you just... We're in the type of industry that when there's a major failure, then you start thinking about the thing. But in your everyday, you just keep using the stuff and don't think twice about it. So that poses a real challenge to us when we try to bring new things to market, because when you go ahead and ask people, you don't really get a good answer unless you really go contextual and go in home visits and start really deep diving into proper usage. But if you don't have a product in market yet, you need to be creative about it. So that's why we use VR quite a lot. And just to showcase sort of the difference when you don't have a product in market yet, and you try to sort of visualize the benefit or the problem you're trying to solve in a 2D image, that's not really helpful for anyone to understand what's going on. Or I don't know, seeing that for the first time, I guess you wouldn't really understand what's going on there, unless you're super into dishwashers. So what we do is we do a blank screen. Let's see what happens.
Let's see if you can extract the lower one.
No.
No. Okay, now works. Oh, that's clever, isn't it?
So this is a typical example of something we would do before the product was in market. If you use VR to actually show what the product is meant to be doing, then you get you get into the right mindset and the context of what's actually going on, and you get much more feedback instead of just showing a 2D picture that no one understands. So we have done that quite a bit to really try and optimize the products, because we obviously want them to be as best they can for the market. And when it comes to going in VR, it's a really hassle-free travel companion, because imagine the case we're going to present. A fridge weighs 70, 80 kilos, something like that, more than me. Traveling with that to like a focus group location and trying to figure out how to get it into a lift or into a room or whatever, that's a nightmare. So using VR is simply fantastic, because you just have a trolley and you roll along, and you can potentially even place it in your or take it in as hand luggage on a flight. So it's super easy to travel with, which is a big thing in our industry. Then obviously in this day and age, also the fact that you don't have to produce a prototype, that you produce once, it's a one of a kind, and then you just toss it out when you're done with it. It produces a lot of waste, and it takes a lot of time to do. So having a VR model is obviously just a simple way not to have anything physical to create the extra weight. then it's also super important for us that if you have a prototype, it's usually quite fragile. So if you want people to interact with it, you have a moderator walking behind going like, no, but don't touch that. No, it doesn't work really like that. And the material should be different. And, you know, imagine this. But in reality, when it's VR, it's, everything is on par and nothing can break. So you get a lot of, across a lot of barriers just by using those goggles. And then in terms of time pressure on the design, and you're going to talk more about that, that's a real big benefit as well, because you don't have these tight deadlines to send off designs for prototyping and then getting back in time to, you know, no storms in the way or anything. So getting it back into the facility on time, and that creates a lot of pressure and a lot of extra worries. Whereas if you have VR, you can do amendments on the go even, so it's a perfectly good way of arriving and doing last minute things, you know, 10 minutes before the people arrive to look at your product. And finally, this is probably not true for all industry if you want to go into VR, but for us in particular, like creating a fridge prototype is hugely expensive. So doing it in VR was actually 4 times lower in costs than it would have been to create a single prototype. So it's a huge thing, and obviously, again, it depends on the context and everything. But from an appliance point of view, it's a super useful win-win situation to use that as stimuli. Which gets us to the interesting part. So what we actually did and how we did it, right?
Yeah. So together with Electrolux, we Happy Thinking People did a study in 3 countries, Sweden, Germany, and Italy, basically to find the best new fridge design for Electrolux. So let's have a look at what we actually did. So we did something that we call the VR lab, and each VR lab lasted 3.5 hours. So we had several sessions of these per market. They all started out with an individual interview. So every respondent put on the VR goggles and was able to interact with the different models in a VR environment. And there we let them interact with them very naturally. We asked specific questions, but we really made sure that within these 20 minutes they got a really good feeling and just really got to know the different models. So there we had 2 models that were already on the market, and then we had 2 prototypes coming from Electrolux, and they were all standing next to each other. After that, we took a little break and made sure the room was ready for the subsequent focus group. So that focus group lasted 2 hours. So all of the people who had only interacted with the models individually up till then came together, and we discussed the designs as a group, pros, cons, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they would like to improve. And once we were done with the design part, we also got into features and like more concept level stuff. Yeah, so I had never worked with VR before going into the study, so I did have a few doubts and issues in mind that I was sort of worried when I entered this research. So the first one was age, because we were talking to a larger wide age range. It was 20 to 60 years old, and I was wondering, okay, how would this work, especially with 50, 55 plus respondents of years. Could they really interact well with the VR environment? How would they just feel with this very digital approach? So that was definitely something I was worried about. Well-being, there is something called virtual reality sickness. It's very similar to motion sickness, and I think you might have all heard of it, that people who are exposed to a VR environment, they can get motion sickness, experience nausea, that kind of thing. So of course I was afraid of lots of respondents just collapsing and falling down and me not knowing what to do. So that was another big worry of mine. Usability, because I hadn't really seen any of the stimulus. I wasn't sure how real it would look, how real it would feel to respondents, and how much usability insights I would actually get out of this. I didn't have many expectations when it came to that either. And then quality perceptions. I mean, we all know quality is so much influenced by colors, materials, finishings, that kind of thing. And I was wondering, okay, how well can this be displayed in a VR environment? Also because respondents can't touch it, they can't really feel it. Weight goes into that as well, especially when you have like a heavy fridge door, and also noises, that kind of thing. So I was wondering, okay, how would this pan out using virtual reality?
Smart. Alltså det här är liksom utanför boxen.
So this is to give you an idea of what the setup looked like.
Jag förstår inte varför. Alltså jag har aldrig sett det här förut. Det kanske finns, men
So the respondent is wearing the glasses.
Varför har man inte
And there on the screen, I as a moderator can see what he is
Och
saying.
varför har jag aldrig sett det någonstans? Varför har jag aldrig sett det i Elgiganten?
Yeah, so I mean that is really cool because as a moderator you're always sort of in the respondent's head. You always know what he or she is looking at the moment, and then I can base my questions on that and can ask on specific details. So let's get to the results. What we got out of this. Here this is actually a screenshot. So these are the 4 fridges that we tested. And as you can see, you can't really tell which are the prototypes and which are already on the market. And that is a huge, huge benefit of VR. Because if you have worked with physical prototypes before, you might know that sometimes, as Jessica mentioned, they're still a bit fragile. They're not entirely finished. So it's sometimes a bit unfair to test these not ready machines next to the ones that are already on the market. But with VR, they all sort of look perfect next to each other, and it's also good that the respondent can't really tell from a first look, okay, this is already there, and this was obviously just produced for this research. Another big advantage is that we can really create this realistic shop environment because, of course, we want to create an experience that is as realistic as possible for respondents, and in the VR, I mean, we made it look like Saturn, MediaMarkt, wherever you do your fridge shopping. So that was also really good, and it really just gave a really realistic impression of the models and just made it feel much more natural for respondents to interact with them. Was also a very immersive research for respondents, but also for the moderator. So for respondents, we just noticed that they were really excited about it. They really got into the topic because the prototypes, they did look so real, and it did feel like reality. So they were really spontaneous. We didn't have like much post-rationalized feedback. It was really in the moment, and we really, really got some great natural feedback from respondents. And as I said,
can I add one
of
thing
course
to that as well? Because one of our Electrolux's worries was that it's a huge investment of time, like 3.5 hours to talk about fridges. Mm-hmm. Who in their right mind would want to do that? But the sort of, except me, who worked there. But in reality, there were so many different tasks and different things happening that it didn't turn out to be a problem. So it was really surprising to me that in fact, people can have opinions for 3.5 hours on fridges, and good ones as well.
Yeah.
So.
And as I said, also immersive for the moderator, because as you could see, like as a moderator, you are always sort of in the respondent's head. You always see what he or she is looking at. So you're sort of immersing into them and you can really ask super specific questions and super detailed questions based on that. Was also, of course, respondents were super curious. A lot of them hadn't really worn VR glasses before, or maybe once using a video game. But I mean, like this cool tech factor, it created almost like a halo effect on this research. So respondents were really excited to be part of it and try it out. Also involvement, I mean, as Jessica mentioned, fridges aren't the most exciting product category to talk about, especially for 3.5 hours. But because respondents were having so much fun during the session, it was really, really involving, and they really just gave some great feedback and really, really got into the topic. It was also, the sessions were actually great fun. Respondents treated the tasks we gave them almost like games and like finding the right puzzle piece to complete the puzzle. So it was really great fun doing the sessions as well. Another huge advantage is that we could change the models basically from one session to the other, which of course you can't do with physical prototypes. You're pretty much stuck with what you get. And here, I mean, there was this one example where we had this really specific metal tray in one of the Electrolux machines, and after the third session, we just realized no one knows what it does. No one really knows what it's there for. So we replaced it with another tray, and that actually made a huge difference, and it made the whole Electrolux proposition so much more attractive. So having this flexibility and also speedy flexibility was really invaluable, was really, really great. And usability. I mean, as I told you, that was one of my main doubts, but we received many usability insights. I mean, as you could see, respondents really can interact with the models. They could open drawers, they could open doors, and because they were designed so realistically, we even got feedback like the drawers don't open far enough, or that door needs to open even further. So usability insights were really one of the main things we gained from this, next to design feedback, of course. Yeah, so I mean, now what about this interplay of using the individual interviews first and then going into the focus groups to discuss? We had very vivid discussions. I mean, you could tell respondents were still really psyched, really excited because they had just won the VR goggles and like interacted with the models. So yeah, it was just really a great discussion, really dynamic, really creative atmosphere, and just really, really fun to moderate these sessions. And then, yeah, because respondents, they had spent so much time with the models, they were with them 20 to 25 minutes, and of course we really forced them also to look at like specific details. So yeah, they were really focused. We could talk about really, yeah, about like even small details. Like a lot of time I was surprised at like what things people could remember. And there was also a lot of attention to detail we could take. Yeah, I mean, this is just to give you an idea. We try to create our own VR atmosphere here. What you can do pretty much just from one session to another. So, I mean, you can add, you can add a display if you like. You can remove a handle or replace it with another one. You can add shelves in the fridge. You can, replace drawers or use different drawer sizes even. You can play around with the inside of the door, or you can even change the color or like try a different sort of material approach if you would like. So this is really great about using VR. And there was another big advantage that we realized came in more after the research, because I don't know if you've worked with designers before, but like before when we did this research with physical models, you could tell that once there's a physical model, the designers are like almost emotionally attached to their models. It's like their baby that they have just created. But since this only existed in VR, they were much more open to the changes we suggested, because like the emotional attachment wasn't there yet. They were much more open, and just really even much more looking forward to implementing the designs than already having a physical prototype and having put so much work into this. So that was another great benefit. So what's important? Obviously teamwork. I mean, there was Electrolux, there was us, and there was also Wobbling. That is the VR agency we worked with from Stockholm. So it was just really a great project, because we all knew what is possible and what is not possible, and just being part of the team and working well together was definitely important. Then you do also need good moderation skills, because when respondents get out of these VR sessions where they've just worn the glasses and like done all of these cool things in VR atmosphere, they are pretty excited and they get into the groups and are really excited and really want to share their thoughts. So as a moderator, you have to make sure you have to calm them down. You have to make sure they don't jump from one aspect to the other and that they don't talk over each other. So I mean, even though the sessions are great fun and really dynamic, as a moderator, you have to make sure that all of your questions get answered. And then, of course, all of them feel heard as well, because they all want to share their opinions. So definitely a lot of moderation skills necessary as well. And good tech support. I mean, the great thing was that for all sessions, we always had a wobbling guy there. And I mean, we didn't have a lot of technical hiccups, but it was just great to have them there, especially in the beginning, when we didn't feel so comfortable with the VR yet. They did some great introductions also for the respondents. And then, of course, when we wanted to make these small changes in between, the wobbling guys were the ones who did this. So let's get back to the challenges I mentioned in the beginning. Big learning age didn't matter at all. As a matter of fact, it was actually the older respondents that worked even better in this VR environment, because I think they just listened to us a bit more, while the younger ones were like, oh yeah, I've done this before, I can do this. And especially the older ones, they had a great time, and it worked across the entire age group, 20 to 60 years old. No one fainted, no one fell, everyone was okay. So like people, I mean, of course, took them a bit to get used to this VR environment, but everyone was fine, no one got sick. And as I mentioned, we had rich usability output. I was super surprised by that. That was actually like one of the main learnings that I got from this research. And we did also get sufficient feedback on quality. We did get feedback from the interviews, so when people were in the VR environment, but the good thing was that we also had the subsequent focus group, so there we could go more into detail, and we could really give the designers some great guidelines on what they should keep in mind when creating the actual next physical prototype. So just to summarize again, costs are much lower, as Jessica mentioned. It's more environmentally friendly, you don't waste any raw materials. this enhanced flexibility that you can just change your prototypes from one session to another is really great, a great advantage. Designers were much more open to what we told them and to what they needed to change to make the designs better. And in the end, we gained deeper and more valuable insights than having used a physical prototype. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Very good.
Hello. As a dishwasher user, can I ask a really nerdy dishwasher question?
Sure.
Were you showing an easier way of opening the bottom shelf? Because I mean, maybe my tummy is too fat, but every day when I bend over to sort of open the bottom tray, I just think this is an effort. So I sort of wait for somebody else in the family to do it.
Right. Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. I'm like, I should have paid you, or I don't know, maybe Electrolux did. Yeah, that's it's a technology we brought to market some years ago called Comfort Lift. So it is you lift up the lower basket to the same level as the upper one, so you can load and unload. Based on insight, that's what we did, because a lot of people have the same issues as you do.
Is it very expensive?
I honestly don't know. It's not the cheapest model for sure, but it should be within. We don't have any super premium brands, so it should be within a reasonable budget.
Thank you.
We had a question here.
Thank you for your presentation. Very inspiring. I can fully see the opportunities, and I'm really wondering what it takes. Both from the agency as from the client. So if we would implement this in our research, because I can imagine that you need equipment, software, also from the client side, maybe the materials that you need to show it to respondents. So I'm curious, what does it take to use this? Mm-hmm. And did you also have the equipment when you were starting this, or did you get it somewhere? How did you start with it?
Right. Well, I can maybe start with the sort of client side, because I think our designers work with like 3D modeling already, so they are very used to working with VR, doing their own designs and optimizing it from their own perspective. So from a design point of view, we already had some of the like the softwares and the models in place needed. What we then went out and did is we found an agency that works with VR to create that environment and also build the competitor models in VR, so that we could have a like-for-like environment with our own models and then competitor models. So that was sort of one part of the technical challenge, which was more, finding a right agency that has the capacity, like they do games and then they suddenly start building fridges, but that type of agency is out there. And I think it's really in terms of that teamwork piece, like finding your expertise and then the right partners to do what they're good at, and certainly I don't think researchers should be building VR environments. You should always go to a partner that does it much more cost efficiently. So I think that's more the technical challenge. I guess the mental challenge in an organization is just challenging the way things have used to be done. So we used to go with prototypes, and there's a waterfall model of how you like process things or innovation, so that you can actually go to market and get a rubber stamp that you're bringing to market a good product. So that was a bit of a challenge to have those discussions internally with the sort of heads of each department, like to explain to them what we're planning to do and what the benefits are, and really that the benefits would outweigh the negative parts by far. And we were lucky enough to have sort of open-minded people who were up for it. And I think it's now, it's the way we're working now. So it was we just needed to show it a couple of times how it works, and then they really saw the richness of the output as good proof that this is a good way to move forwards with.
Yeah, I was also happy that Wobbling is the name of the agency you worked with. They're also in Stockholm, and they supplied all the materials. Like they brought the glasses and the laptops and all kinds of things. So I mean, all you need as a researcher is just a big enough room so that the respondents can interact, and lots of outlets, electrical outlets for the technical stuff. But that's it. So I mean, it's super easy as a researcher when Wobbling is taking care of everything. Yeah.
I have a question. When you work with high-fidelity prototypes, people tend to spend most of their effort discussing the details, like talking about a wallpaper for a house instead of focusing on the floor plan. So I actually teach at an industrial school of design in Umeå in Sweden, and I really strongly stress that people need to start with cardboard models and rough paper sketches before they spend time doing something polished. In this case, your VR model looked very polished. Have you considered working with a more rough version initially to catch the big issues?
Well, maybe I can take that one as well, because I mean this was the last leg sort of it. So yeah, we do prior work as well that's done in either just concept boards or even cardboarding and all of that. So that does happen. We don't tend to put in front of consumers. Like our end consumers, these cardboard, they're more internal usability lab type of testing that we do with those models.
I think you should put it in front of real users, because the cardboard conveys a feeling of playfulness, and everyone can bend a piece of cardboard or make an adjustment.
True.
It's more democratic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know that at this point in the research process, you are really looking for very detailed design feedback. So I mean, that's why you need actual models to get that feedback from respondents.
Hello, I have a question about interview logistics, maybe, as I could call it. Well, you mentioned that you had one interview, another, so one after another. How do you manage that respondents, they didn't get to conclusions before the discussion group without you? So where do you keep them? How do you manage this process?
Yeah, I mean, we always had 2 interviews in parallel, so then we had like 3 sessions, and then we went into the focus group, and we just asked them not to talk about the designs before, not to talk too much about the designs. I mean, you're always like, I'm a moderator, I'm really curious, I don't want to miss anything, so please don't talk about the designs without me. Or sometimes we even told them, okay, you have another 40 minutes until the group starts, so if you want, you can go for a walk, have a cigarette, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think, Sarah.
Okay, just very quickly, I'm thinking about the context that you were trying to imitate with the VR. You mentioned, like, and I saw it on a picture, like the shop. So I was just curious about that. Did you also test in the home environment, or why was the shop the one that was interesting?
This was more for how our innovation is set up. So the first part of it is like the usability tests, and those are more in a home environment. This is, we wanted to recreate, because of the output we wanted to have, we wanted to do it in a shop environment. So it's
about when they take the
final decision. Yeah. So it's those type of metrics that we're looking for. So it was purely based on that. Lots of questions.
I have a quick question on method, actually. So it could have been that you just did the VR interviews and then maybe some subsequent interview directly after the VR, just so you don't have to take respondents for a 40-minute walk while whatever they do in between, I don't know. So how valuable, in your opinion, were the focus groups versus maybe individual interviews that you could have done as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was really valuable to have both, because I mean, you needed that time for respondents to really interact with the models by themselves, also so they don't get influenced by the others so much. But then the focus group, I mean, yeah, I think you really need that focus group dynamic to really understand the things that need to be improved, the things that maybe need to be changed, like to really, so they can really sort of build upon each other and be like, oh yeah, I like this, but I didn't like this, so maybe they can do that. So I think you really needed that creative dynamic to give good recommendations to the designers. And then when we were done with the designs, we also talked about features. So not so much about designs anymore. And also we talked a bit more on the concept level. So that's what we also needed the focus group dynamic for.